Michelangelo was born on March 6, 1475. His full name was Michelangelo Buonarroti. He came from a family in Florence, Italy. His family once had a high status, but they lost much of their wealth by the time he was born. His father had small jobs in the government. When Michelangelo was born, his father worked in Capris, a small town. Soon after, they returned to Florence, where they lived for many years. Michelangelo showed an early interest in art, but his father did not support him at first. His father wanted him to have a more respected job. At the age of 13, Michelangelo became an apprentice to Domenico Ghirlandaio, a famous painter in Florence. An apprentice is a young person who learns a skill by working with an expert. Michelangelo worked with him for only 1 year. Ghirlandaio taught him to draw and paint, but Michelangelo wanted to focus on sculpture. Sculpture is making shapes from stone or other materials. Lorenzo de' Medici, a powerful man in Florence, noticed Michelangelo's talent. He invited him to live in his palace. Lorenzo introduced Michelangelo to poets and thinkers. He also let him study old Roman statues in his art collection. Michelangelo learned much by studying these ancient works. He also began making his own sculptures. His early years in Florence gave him the skills and knowledge he would use in his great works later. His hard work and talent helped him become one of the greatest artists in history. Michelangelo started making sculptures when he was young. He created 2 early works, Madonna of the Stairs and Battle of the Centaurs. These works showed his talent for making detailed figures from stone. Madonna of the Stairs is a small piece with soft and gentle lines. It shows the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus. The work is calm and simple, which was popular in Florence at that time. Battle of the Centaurs was different. It showed a fight between many figures. The figures are full of action and strength. This sculpture gave a hint of the bold and powerful style Michelangelo would use in his later works. Both works were made while he was still studying under the support of Lorenzo de' Medici. After Lorenzo died, Michelangelo had to leave Florence. He traveled to other cities to look for work. He spent some time in Bologna, where he made small sculptures for the tomb of Saint Dominic. These pieces showed serious faces and simple shapes. He used marble, a type of stone, for these works. In 1496, Michelangelo moved to Rome. There, he created a famous sculpture called Bacchus. It shows the Roman god of wine. This statue was unusual. It was made for a garden and looked lively. People could walk around it to see it from all sides. Bacchus helped Michelangelo get more attention. It showed that he could make detailed and realistic figures. In 1498, Michelangelo was asked to create the Pietà, which means pity in Italian. It shows Mary holding Jesus after he died. This work is carved from 1 block of marble. The figures look soft and lifelike, even though they are made from stone. The Pietà became famous quickly. It made Michelangelo well known as a great sculptor. In 1501, Michelangelo returned to Florence. He was asked to create a statue for the city's cathedral. The statue was meant to show the biblical hero David, who fought and won against the giant Goliath. Michelangelo used a large piece of marble that had been left unfinished by another artist. The marble was difficult to work with because it had many cracks, but Michelangelo was determined to make something great. He worked on the statue for more than 2 years. He spent long hours shaping the stone. When finished, the statue of David stood over 4 meters tall. It showed David as strong and calm, ready to fight. The people of Florence loved the statue. It became a symbol of the city's strength and independence. At first, it was planned to be placed high on the cathedral, but the statue was so beautiful that plans changed. A special group of leaders decided it should be placed in the main square, where everyone could see it up close. David's pose is very natural. One hand holds a stone, and the other hand is relaxed. His face shows both focus and courage. Michelangelo gave the statue very realistic details. The muscles and veins look almost alive, even though they are carved from stone. The statue became famous across Italy. People from other cities came to see it. David proved Michelangelo's talent as one of the greatest sculptors of his time. Today, the statue of David is still one of the most admired works of art in the world. In 1508, Pope Julius II asked Michelangelo to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. The Sistine Chapel is a church in the Vatican where popes are chosen and important events happen. Michelangelo did not want to paint it first. He thought of himself as a sculptor, not a painter. The Pope insisted, so Michelangelo agreed to do the work. The ceiling was very high, and the project was huge. Michelangelo had to build special platforms to reach the ceiling. He worked lying on his back for hours every day. The painting took 4 years to complete, from 1508 to 1512. It was one of the hardest jobs of his life. The ceiling shows stories from the Bible, mainly from the book of Genesis. The paintings include scenes like the creation of Adam, which is one of Michelangelo's most famous works. In this scene, God reaches out his hand to give life to Adam, the first man. Michelangelo painted many figures, including prophets and angels, to fill the space. The figures look very lifelike, with strong muscles and realistic poses. Michelangelo's skill made the paintings seem almost alive, even though they were painted on a flat surface. As Michelangelo worked, his style grew more confident and bold. The later figures he painted became larger and showed more movement. People were amazed by how much energy and beauty the ceiling had when it was finished. The Sistine Chapel ceiling was praised as a masterpiece. It showed Michelangelo's incredible talent as a painter. Even though Michelangelo saw himself mainly as a sculptor, this work proved he was great in both arts. Today, millions of people visit the Sistine Chapel to see the ceiling. It remains one of the world's greatest works of art. After finishing the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo returned to sculpture, his first love. One of his most famous later works is the statue of Moses, made for the tomb of Pope Julius II. Moses is shown sitting with a long beard, holding the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. The statue of Moses shows great strength and emotion. His face looks powerful, and his muscles are detailed and lifelike. Many people believe this sculpture is one of Michelangelo's greatest works. It is still in the Church of San Pietro in Vincoli in Rome, where it was first placed. Michelangelo also worked on many unfinished sculptures during this time. One example is the St. Matthew statue, which shows the Apostle Matthew partly carved from stone. It looks like the figure is trying to break free from the marble block, which shows Michelangelo's creative style. Another famous unfinished work is The Dying Slave. It was meant for the tomb of Pope Julius II, but was never completed. The sculpture shows a man with his head bent, as if he is asleep or in pain. Many believe this unfinished style gives the sculpture more meaning, showing struggle and sadness. Michelangelo also created 2 later Pietà sculptures, similar to the one he made as a young man. One of these was meant for his own tomb, showing Mary holding Jesus after his death. He worked on it for years, but became unhappy with it, and even broke part of it. These later sculptures are admired for their deep emotion and personal meaning. They show Michelangelo's feelings about life, death, and the passage of time. Even unfinished, his works are considered some of the most beautiful sculptures in history. In his later years, Michelangelo began focusing on architecture. He designed many important buildings in Italy. One of his most famous projects was the Laurentian Library in Florence. This library was built to hold books collected by the Medici family, who supported Michelangelo. The library has a small entrance hall with a grand staircase leading to the reading room. Michelangelo made the walls and columns in the entrance hall look bold and creative. This design was different from the usual style of the time, showing Michelangelo's unique ideas. Another great project was St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Michelangelo worked on its design for many years. He focused on making the inside feel open and grand, with huge walls and spaces. Michelangelo also worked on the design of the famous dome, which is the round top of the building. The Dome of St. Peter's is one of Michelangelo's most admired works. It is very large and can be seen from far away. The dome gives the church a strong and beautiful look. It is a symbol of Rome's power and history. Today, many other buildings, like the U.S. Capitol, have domes inspired by Michelangelo's design. Michelangelo also worked on the Medici Chapel in Florence, where he designed tombs for the Medici family. The chapel has sculptures of figures called day, night, dawn, and dusk. These figures represent the passing of time. The chapel's design shows both beauty and deep meaning, combining architecture and sculpture perfectly. Michelangelo's architectural works showed his great skill and creativity. He often mixed strong shapes with soft details, making his buildings feel alive. His designs are still studied and admired by architects around the world today. In 1534, Michelangelo began painting The Last Judgment on the wall of the Sistine Chapel. Pope Clement VII asked him to create this artwork, which took several years to complete. This large painting shows what happens at the end of the world, based on the Bible. The painting is divided into two parts: the saved souls who go to heaven and the damned souls who fall to hell. At the top, Christ is the center figure. He is shown as a strong judge, deciding the fate of each person. Around Christ are saints, angels, and other holy figures, all looking serious and full of emotion. The lower part of the painting shows the dead rising from their graves. Some are pulled up by angels, while others are dragged down by demons into hell. Michelangelo's figures are full of movement, showing the struggle between good and evil. Michelangelo used bold colors to create contrast between heaven and hell. The figures in heaven are calm and bright, while those in hell look dark and twisted. This made the painting powerful and dramatic for people who saw it. The Last Judgment caused some debate when it was finished. Some people thought the figures were too naked and wanted them covered. Others believed it was too emotional. Despite this, the painting was praised for its beauty and power, showing Michelangelo's great skill. Today, The Last Judgment is one of the most famous works of art in the world. It attracts millions of visitors to the Sistine Chapel each year. The painting remains a masterpiece that shows Michelangelo's genius as both an artist and a storyteller.